History repeats itself, and I think we're seeing vestiges of that now. I really want people, young and some not so young, to know that what you read in history is not just about names and dates to remember for a test. These are things that happened to real people, had impact on real families. And if nothing else, they need to know this so that it won't happen again.
One family, three siblings' lives forever changed in different ways by the struggle for civil rights. In 1957, 9 African American teenagers desegregated Little Rock's Central High School. Their families instilled in them the courage needed to persevere for their rights.
None of the families pressured any of the students to give up. They really were willing to let us ride it out and stick by us.
The Green Siblings documentary project seeks to tell the story of one family's experience during this time.
I often talk with my brothers about how fortunate we were to grow up in the kind of family that we did. My mother was a teacher.
I grew up in a family that if you got a B, you had to explain why you received that and not an A.
My father was a World War I veteran. And in fact, some of the first words that I remember being taught were "Parlez-vous français?"
It always struck me as ironic that he went all the way to France to help liberate the French. And when he came back to Arkansas, he couldn't vote.
The Green Siblings were raised in a Little Rock community grounded in Black leadership and achievement.
We had the privilege of growing up in neighborhoods where there were many professional models, and which meant that you knew you were going to grow up to be a something because everybody around you was a something.
He was a letter carrier, and the next corner was Mr. Jackson. He was the brick mason and contractor. The other side, a neighbor was a nurse.
It was that kind of neighborhood, the kind that everybody took care.
And around 6 or 7, when you start pairing off for school and other activities, then you begin to notice that, this is a stratified, segregated existence.
During that time, everything was segregated.
In 1954, the Supreme Court passed the landmark Brown versus the Board of Education decision to desegregate public schools in America. That decision would be put to the test in Little Rock in 1957, when Ernest was part of the now iconic Little Rock Nine.
Who's going to implement the Brown decision? Somebody's got to step forward on it. And I figured, I saw what Jackie Robinson did in baseball and a few other things beginning to break through. I said, why not me?
At one point, though, my mother asked Ernest if he wanted to come to Baltimore to live with me because things had really gotten rough. But his response was no. He accepted this responsibility and he was going to stick it out.
Ernest Green became the first African-American student to graduate from Little Rock Central High School in 1958.
We had visionaries in our families who really thought that this was the right thing to do, and they stood by us.
The violent reaction against the decision to desegregate Little Rock's school system affected the education of Ernest's younger brother, Scott Green.
He was, and you probably know, was a member of the lost class. This is a class the year after Ernest graduated that were victims of the closed schools. The governor closed every high school in Little Rock because he was determined that no other black person would graduate from Central.
Scott never graduated from high school, but he went on to earn his GED and became the first black member of the Sheet Metal Workers Local 28 in New York. Today, he is still involved in litigation for equity and equality in the union.
But I really think his experiences just really soured his relationship with formal ed, although we always said he was the smartest one of all of us.
They wanted that education. They pursued it despite the circumstances, the surrounding circumstances that mean that what we call standing in your conviction. What the Little Rock Nine endured, we're still dealing with it 61 years later. That society is continually prescribing how we perceive each other. I am still questioning what's going on. Where's our humanity? Why is our humanity missing?
To desegregate doesn't mean to integrate. And unfortunately, desegregation is what has happened in most cases, and not integration. All people know too little about other people. You can't help, when you get to know people and know them as people without stereotyping, good things happen.
Growing up, we say, you must take care of the root for the other tree, meaning that you take care of that child and cultivate that child, and that healing process began because they pass it on. So I'm saying you must take care of the root for the other tree.
The Green Sibling Documentary Project seeks funding to further develop a documentary film, book, and teaching website for classroom use.